What if the most important historical records, they aren't actually in some dusty archive? What if they're in those fleeting moments you see on a city street? That's really the promise and the power of street photography. It's not about just taking quick snapshots. No, it's the craft of creating a raw, unvarnished document of our time, of preserving the quiet truths of our daily lives. But wielding that kind of power, well, it comes with an immense weight of responsibility. The National Press Photographers Association, they just put it perfectly. Let that phrase sink in for a second. Trustees of the public. That elevates this work way beyond just making art. It means we have a duty, a real duty, to hold a mirror up to the world exactly as it is. So every single time a photographer is out there on a public street, they're engaging in an act of public trust. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into right now. The craft that's required to capture reality with real integrity, and the conscience you need to do it with humanity. Because in my world, you just can't have one without the other. It's impossible. All right, so let's start with the big question. Why? Why even walk the streets with a camera in the first place? Well, it's because history isn't just made in palaces or on battlefields. It's written on the pavement, in the gestures of ordinary people. Street photography creates that unvarnished record, the real story of our time, told one quiet, honest moment at a time. Think about it. While news crews are off chasing the big headlines, the street photographer is committed to what one writer called the run-of-the-mill flotsam of everyday life. These are the moments that give an era its true feeling, its texture. The way people wait for a bus, or argue, or laugh. We're literally saving these details from being lost forever, and in doing so, creating a social history that's way more authentic than any official account could ever be. Okay, but here's the thing. Capturing that raw history, it's not a passive act. It really demands craft. So if the goal is to document an authentic reality, how do you actually do it? Well, it all comes down to taking control, to making deliberate, intentional choices with your camera. Now, this slide really gets to the heart of a fundamental choice you have to make. In auto, you're basically letting a computer chip guess what's important in a scene. But the street is filled with tricky light, right? Deep shadows, bright sun. Auto mode just fails here. It gets confused, it exposes for the wrong thing, and it kills the moment. Manual mode, on the other hand, is your intention taking over. It's you translating what you feel about a scene into a final image, not just accepting a processor's best guess. And look, taking that control, it's way simpler than it seems. Just think of it as a series of storytelling decisions. First, you set your camera's sensitivity, your ISO, to whatever light you have. Then you make your main choice. Is the story in the motion? If so, you prioritize shutter speed to freeze it or blur it. Is the story about one person in a huge crowd? Well, then you prioritize a wide aperture to isolate them. Your last adjustment just balances out the light. See? Every single choice serves the story you're trying to tell. So once you've got that technical side down, now you can really focus on the art of it all, composition. This is how you find order in the chaos. It's how you build a really powerful narrative inside a single frame. And I absolutely love this idea because it is just so true. A painter, they start with a blank canvas. We start with, well, everything. The entire messy, beautiful world is right there in front of us. So our job is to subtract, to use the four edges of our frame to carve out one meaningful scene from all that chaos. We are curators of reality, not creators of it. So here are the tools of the trade, but let's zoom in on layering and depth for a second. This is where the truly great street photography happens. It's what the master Henri Cartier-Bresson called the decisive moment, that split second when all these unrelated things in the foreground, the middle ground, and the background all just perfectly align to tell a single, complex story. It creates a scene the viewer can get lost in for minutes. And this is probably the most critical piece of advice I can possibly give. The number one compositional failure I see time and time again, being too far away. A long lens. It feels safe, I get it, but it creates this flat, detached, almost voyeuristic image. To make the viewer feel the energy of the street, to make them feel present, you have to get closer. You have to be part of the scene. It's all about intimacy and immediacy. All right, so we've talked about the why and the how, but now we have to get into the trickiest, most complex part of this whole thing, the should. This is where a photographer's conscience is absolutely everything. So let's just get this out on the table right away. Legally, in most countries, If you are standing in a public space, you can photograph pretty much anything you can see. That's the legal foundation of our work as journalists and as documentarians. But, and this is the question that I think defines a photographer's entire career. Just because it's legal, does that mean it's right? Just because you can, does that mean you should? Legality is not a substitute for morality, and that's a question we have to answer for ourselves on every street corner with every single frame. This right here, this is the fundamental tension of the work. From my perspective, as the photographer, a candid image is truthful. It's an unposed, unguarded, honest moment. But from the subject's perspective, they might feel exposed, vulnerable, even exploited. In that split second, the photographer holds all the power. And recognizing that power imbalance is the absolute first step toward practicing this craft with integrity. So the question is, how do we handle that power responsibly? Well, we need a personal framework, right? A kind of code of conduct that puts humanity above everything else. Luckily, professional organizations give us a really solid place to start. And these aren't just rigid rules. Think of them as working principles. Treat every single person with dignity. Actively avoid reinforcing negative stereotypes. And be honest. The goal is to see people as participants in the human story, not just as props for your photograph. And this has to be your internal monologue every single time. In that split second before you even raise the camera, you have to ask yourself, what's my motivation here? Am I punching down, exploiting someone's hardship for a gritty picture? Or am I trying to reveal a deeper truth to create some empathy? The intention behind the lens changes everything. You know, the Magnum photographer Sim Chi Yin said it best. And honestly, it's the code I try to live by. Human being first, photographer second. This simple phrase, it just crystallizes the entire ethical debate. Before you are an artist, before you are a documentarian, you are a human being interacting with another. And that shared humanity has to come first. Always. And what's so fascinating here is that these ethical lines in the sand, they can actually make you more creative. If you decide, for example, that it's wrong to photograph a person's face in a vulnerable moment, well, that forces you to look deeper. Can you tell the same story through the gesture of their hands, through the interaction of shadows on the pavement? Your choice of a narrow aperture to focus on just one detail, that can become an ethical tool, respecting dignity while still capturing the truth. And so, at the end of the day, we're left with this one fundamental tension. Is this image a vital piece of our shared social history, or is it an act of exploitation? In street photography, that line can be razor thin. It is an incredibly powerful tool for preserving our human story, but it demands a profound sense of responsibility. Because that choice, with every single click of the shutter, is yours.